Hello there, aspiring Tennos. I bring you a MIRAGE Prime build today. She is currently unvaulted and therefore pretty easy to get your hands on. Alright, so the nice thing about this build is that it's, let's say, relatively budget, right? So basically, all of the damage here comes from Mirage's fourth ability. The Epitaph is mainly there to provide a little bit of CC in terms of cold and other useful status effects. As well, your Panzerwolf Profiler will give you some amount of viral, so always that plays into the damage as well. But understand that the Disco Ball, your fourth ability, is doing most of the damage. Now, your defenses on this build are your blinds, and you have two of them here, in fact. We're also using a little bit of shield gating with brief respite and some auger mods, which means that whenever we cast our fourth, we gain enough shield so that we have a free shield gate. Now, the blind comes from, first up, when your Disco Ball, your fourth ability, that prism, when that ends, you will blind enemies around you. As well, we're using Mesa's shooting gallery, and once you kill 6 enemies, your next shot will then blind enemies within 10 meters, scaling with ability range, which is then 15 meters on this build. That's where all the defense comes from. And in terms of that, it's a pretty simple build. It's not, again, as I already said, it's not going to be the most powerful meta build, but for not that many resources, you can get yourself started. And what's great about this build is that it pretty much doesn't really have any limitations except for disruption. It doesn't do anything for disruption. You will need a glaive or something like that to take care of that. But other than that, it can pretty much do everything in the game. Struggles a little bit on capture targets, but there's not so many capture targets that this should really be a problem for you anyways. So let's go ahead and take a look at the build itself. So let's talk about the build as well as some of the limitations. This is not like a super crazy high-end build unless you add something like the glaive. And again, but first up, let me go ahead and show you. So this is not really meant to kill super tanky enemies. We have some of these bombards here, which are not going to go down so easily. Going to apply some different stacks to them, and then I'm going to start trying to kill them with this. And sure, it hurts them, but it takes a lot of build-up just to get to that point. I just want to throw that out there, okay? And if some of them are too far away, or if they're in the shadows, you're in trouble. You are actually in trouble. Maybe if you can get enough armor off them by using the Epitaph, you might be able to kill them, but it's not exactly gonna be easy. I mean, it's kind of doing it. But not really. Of course, this is gonna be way easier. Anyways. So again, the glaive, not necessary. I showed you in the video just before, you can kill the acolytes, but it's a huge help to have it. Throw this at the acolyte twice and they're dead. Especially if you throw some stacks on them first, of like corrosive and viral, stuff like that. So ignore the cool Brahma. That's from a different video. It's not used for this build. It can be used. It's a very powerful weapon still, but it's not really intended for this build. It's basically what I'm saying. Mirage first, as he is the star of this entire build. So we're using natural talent because trying to cast her fourth ability, which is the main ability of this whole setup, without this, pretty awful, right? It's way too slow, especially because it only has a 4-second duration with the prism guard, which makes the Disco Ball or whatever it's called, the prism, follow you instead of randomly just flying around. That was my Discord, please ignore it. Then as well, we're using Muscle Flash. So we're using 2 augments on this setup, and we're using this with Mesa's shooting gallery. So basically, what's going to happen while this is up is that every so often we will be disabling the weapons of 3 enemies at random. Well, I mean 3 random enemies every 3 seconds, not at random. Now, it's a little bit of a damage buff, but it's a flat damage buff, so it doesn't do all that much. It has a decent range of like 20 meters. But the important part is that every time we kill 6 enemies with our augment here, Muscle Flash, we are going to be blinding the enemies. And blind enemies can't attack you because, well, they can't see. So now we have 2 ways of blinding the enemies. That's pretty damn important. As mentioned before, we're using Eruption as well. It costs like 60 platinum for level 5. It's not bad at all. And it's just, you know, a little bit of added survivability. The enemies can't kill you if they're on their ass. Other than that, we have like a little bit of strength and a little bit of range. And then I'm using a good bit of duration because I don't want to have to cast my disco ball too often. But then also, very importantly, I don't want any more efficiency. I want to keep it at a level where right now when I cast this, my fourth ability is going to cost 50 enemy on the cast. And that, along with my Augur mods, which I will show you in a moment, is enough that I will fully replenish my shield while I'm using a Decaying Dragon Key, which the time when you are the most vulnerable with this build is when you're casting your ultimate, your fourth ability. And this will allow us to always have a shield gate to save us specifically when we're using that ability. So while shield gating is always important, it is even more important on Mirage. If you miss your blind on an enemy that's right around the corner and that's a bombard, if you get locked into your animation while he's, you know, shooting at you, you're just gonna die, right? Unless you have some saving grace, which would be your shield gate, you're just done for. There's not that much room for error on this build, but at the same time, it's not the most difficult build in the world. Anyways, we're using the Epitaph here. Perpetual Agony is pretty damn important, but also I'm using Augur Seeker here, and you don't need the other Augur mod, but if you for some reason want to, you can run this instead of Perpetual Agony, or maybe even Embedded Catalyzer. It depends. If you want to aim every time you use the Epitaph, that can get a little bit annoying. It is a nice buff, but you know, not absolutely necessary. So there's some options there for that as well. This is not for killing at all. This is just for getting a bunch of status effect. Your quick tap with the Epitaph will make a short range and then an explosion, which will guarantee a cold proc. As well, it has a pretty high status. So a couple of shots of this will apply a bunch of different status effects on the enemies, which, you know, is great for viral, for more damage, cold, for slowing down enemies, stuff like that, right? Staggering, basically more stuff that prevents the enemies from attacking you. I'm using the Vasarin skill tree here, and I'm using it specifically because of Protective Dash. I didn't use it too much, and I got away with it, but it was definitely kind of risky. If you are exclusively going to be using your fourth ability to kill acolytes, then I recommend that you at least go ahead and dash through yourself with this for that invulnerability. And if you don't mind spending a little bit more on this build, I would recommend getting something like this, even without sacrificial steel, just normal. I think it's what's called true steel or something. Yeah. Obviously, it's you lose 100% critical chance, so it's kind of a big deal. But it's not like you can't use it. So using the heavy attack and then detonating the glaive on the acolytes twice will kill them. So that's a huge help. Consider getting this build. Is there anything more I need to say about this? Oh yeah, if you decide that you want to do a really proper long run, multiple hours, you will need some kind of primary alongside this. Or you can use your glaive. That's also an option. That can work, definitely. Glaive for the big enemies and the disco ball for the smaller stuff. But you are very squishy, okay? I just want to throw that out there. And eventually, when you can't kill quite so fast, more enemies are going to be able to approach you before you can kill them. So in that kind of scenario, you're going to need something like a Rolling Guard. And I would replace it with Orca Secrets here. So as you can see, you lose a little bit of ability strength, but that's okay. It's not great, but it's okay. And with Rolling Guard, you have that, saving grace in terms of being able to roll every time before you use your fourth ability, which is when you are the most vulnerable. Other than that, you can just use your other abilities for shield gating, and you should be okay. If you're not too familiar with shield gating, this is a pretty okay place to start, as it's not a terribly difficult shield gating setup to play. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next one.